you are CEO because you're Ian versus people thinking just because you're Rosen, you're a CEO?
I think there is, if you want to peel it back, when you enter a family business, you have to accept that you're probably not going to get full credit for anything you do. And you have to be totally comfortable with that. And I am.
Are you?
I'm not
Was that an immediate comfortability, or did it take you some time?
Before I jumped in, I knew, and I had to come to terms with the fact that if I'm looking to write my novel, this is the wrong path.
Mr. Ian Rosen.
That's me.
That's you. Welcome to the Just Talk podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You are a busy man, and you're a world traveler.
Yes.
I mean, from the outside, anybody looking at your social media will think that you just go to fashion shows in Milan and chill, and that's it.
It is a perk of the job.
Yeah.
It's January and June of every single year now is Men's Fashion Week in Italy, and now it's extending on to Paris. So it's a really fun way and energizing way to see what's coming next year. Mm-hmm. And it's new to me. It's something that I do with our merchant team, but it's always surprising just how much some of these brands put into elaborate and extensive presentations that inspire you as a retailer to buy in, not only in piecemeal, right? Like one of the things that they're trying to show is here is the brand that we are. Don't just buy a cardigan, don't buy a few sweaters, buy into the idea of, and that's what it affords you, rather than what COVID was a line sheet of here's the collection next season. It's like, I like these 7 pieces. So
Yeah.
It's really good. It's something we don't take for granted anymore also. And I think it's proving to make our assortment on the floor a lot more compelling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you are the 3rd generation of Rosens,
Yes.
and it's your grandfather that started Harry Rosen.
Yes.
What year was that?
1954.
1954.
69 and a half years ago.
Wow. And now your father steps into the role of CEO,
Yes.
and you step into the role of COO,
Yes.
Chief Operating Officer. But you weren't always into the family business.
No. My father was not one to pressure us to say, hey, from day one, you're going to join the business. I'm one of 3 boys.
Mm.
So I have an older brother, Daniel. I have a younger brother, Graham, who actually just joined us in the business last year. And our education was all about go figure out who you are, get good grades, figure out if extracurriculars are something that keeps you going. I played a lot of hockey growing up. I got really into film editing. One of my best friends growing up worked on SNL, went on to go to Tisch and SNL, and I was like, I want to follow Matt into that world.
Yeah.
But there wasn't much pressure. I ended up applying to Western, went to the business program there, and like anybody coming out of a business program, it was no idea what they want to do. Yep. I went into management consulting, so felt like an easy way to punt the decision down the road. And it was an incredible 3 to 4 year experience for me just to try so many different industries. And I spent time at mines, figuring out how to make them more efficient or plan the workforce for a down cycle. I'm one of the biggest or foremost experts on vegetation management probably in the city, which is when you prune trees away from power lines in a strategic way. You get to geek out on all these like little problems, but the thing I learned after going on this random walk of different projects for 3 to 5 month periods is nothing is getting me going. Like nothing is getting me excited. And I did one project where it was in retail, more on the consumer packaged goods side of things, and I could say relate to the product that I was starting to do strategy work for. And I said, I really want to be doing stuff where I have no idea if the customer is going to buy in. I don't know if it's it's not necessarily like pulling a resource out of the ground and there's going to be a spot price and, that's what you get. It's, I'm going to come up with a strategy, a plan. I'm going to put that into market, and then people have to shop or behave differently. It got me like really excited. So I started trying to do more and more of that work. And I'll fast forward as much as possible, but I was caught in the really like sweet spot during the rise of e-commerce. And so many of the companies I was consulting with were asking questions like, should I set up my own online website? How should I set up the logistics for it? Should I be selling on Amazon? What does this look like in terms of percentage of my business? And I got like really excited by it, really wanted to do it myself. I got like the bug, like I got to jump in. And that was really the point where I started talking to my father about like, what are we doing at Harry Rosen about our e-commerce business? Is this something that's strategic, or is it just, an adjunct part of the business? And we started talking a little bit more about a role and coming back. And my wife and I were living in Chicago at the time and, missed home a little bit. So it felt like serendipity to jump in. I got full accountability for the e-commerce business. At the time, it was like 2.5% of our business. And I guess spent a year planning for what it would look like for our business to be built around a digital infrastructure, for online to be an important experience within what we do. I mean, people have different preconceived notions for what Harry Rosen is and isn't, but we definitely cater to a more tailored and formal aspect, but we also have a lot of casual wear, which is a really good portion of the online business. And we had a plan. March 2020 comes around and it's like, okay, well, this is the plan.
This is it.
So put a pause on everything else. And it was a really exciting, scary, emotional experience as well, obviously, because we were trying to steer a business through, something that was totally unprecedented. But from an online business perspective, it really got us to build that muscle super quickly. Luckily, we had the plan that we were building on for a year. So it was just, accelerate. It wasn't like, online's going to be big. We'd made that decision a couple of years prior.
Before we started recording, you said you were telling Matthew, Harry Rosen is no longer your father's suit shop.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
We've been around for nearly 70 years as a business. My grandfather is like the ultimate entrepreneur. He had a shop in Cabbagetown in Toronto, and it was a small made-to-measure shop he opened with his brother Lou. He was faking that the shelves were full. He was putting, extra things on hangers, stuffing shelves with bolts of fabric to make it look a little bit more robust, and just winning one customer at a time. And his core capability and competency was tailored clothing. He loved the way a suit fit a man. He would go all over the world, tear apart garments, bring them back to a local manufacturer. One of our partners for years was Copley. And he'd say, can you put a little bit of extra padding in this shoulder? And, what if this was, only half canvas versus fully canvas? So our DNA was in tailored clothing. And that's how the business started to scale, was a little bit more focused on dress shirts and ties and suits and sports jackets and dress pants. And, the brilliance of Harry, because he was very, very good at marketing. He started positioning himself and the business as the expert out there. Ask Harry how long your suit jacket should be. Ask Harry where the cuff should fall with respect to your dress shoe. That was one of the campaigns he came up with. We actually still use that campaign to this day because we still position ourselves as the menswear expert.
Right.
Just the definition of what menswear is and the appropriateness of, the work wardrobe has evolved just so much.
Right.
So for us, we still position ourselves true to that, hey, we want to be the experts, and we educate our team so much on the construction of knits, the construction of even athletic wear or, casual wear on the weekend. What's it made out of? What makes it valuable? What would a guy be doing as he's wearing this? Which kind of guy are we trying to speak with? And that's never going to change. That's never going to go to style. Now, suiting is definitely less popular than it was 70 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, even 10 years ago, it was a much more dramatic part of our business than it is today. But that positioning allows us to make sure that we're listening to the client, seeing what they want to shop for, and then curating, you know, going out to the world and bringing that back to them. So that's one of the roles that we have as curators, right? We're a retailer. We're not a manufacturer. We go out, we look at what the world's saying about men's fashion, and we bring it back to the client. So yeah, we're no longer My Father's Suit Store, because what you would expect at a Harry Rosen is a wall of dress shirts, you know, a lot of blue, black, and gray suiting. Today, it's a much more dynamic environment. We have a lot of different collections from, you know, all the way in the uber luxury world, like Brunello Cucinelli, Zegna, etc., all the way down to, you know, we have a great Lacoste polo business. We have a great partnership with Psycho Bunny. Our swimwear business, you know, during the summer, and colorful shorts is, you know, a huge portion of the business that we do. So guys like to dress in different ways for different occasions.
Yeah.
So.
And you have to tailor to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that is overlooked, we feel, in as the world's gotten more casual, is the core part of men's fashion is still tailored and structured in a way. That could be a great overcoat. You don't want to wear it long. You want to be able to be able to offer tailoring services to shorten that so that it can sit right on a gentleman. And because we still keep our tailoring services in-house, like, yes, we're selling jeans, but we're not making you go find a person to hem it out on the street. We're taking responsibility for making sure that you walk out the door fitting perfectly in that. So
Yeah.
So you can get stuff tailored, not just suits, like jeans, shirts.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We, shorten a jean if you want to taper a leg a little bit. Even a puffer jacket, if it has a cuff that's, sleeve that's too long on you, you're just going to be, hiking it up for a long time. So we really feel that standing behind all the products that we do, and tailoring is a dying art, unfortunately. We are very lucky to have an incredible tailoring team at each one of our locations, and we're constantly teaching them and educating them on how to approach a more complex alteration, like something that's down-filled or something that requires, you to reattach something and match a pattern, which is, I guess, a little bit more common on casual wear or leisure wear.
You mentioned, I want to go back a second, the moment in time when a young Ian was sort of out there exploring a variety of different industries. If we were to meet that Ian, who would we meet?
I was to me, whatever I was doing, I wanted to learn obsessively about it. I really loved knowing how the train was built and how all the parts fit together. I geek out about things like vegetation management, because it was mind-blowing to me that the world works by, making sure that trees don't grow into power lines. Sounds intuitive, but how do you actually operationalize that stuff? Mm-hmm. I have to send out trucks to the right place, every 6 to 7 years, and I need to know how much I cut back that tree. I was super into just figuring out how all this stuff worked. So when I jump into something, or if I was going to, spend my life jumping into the world of fashion, I just had to be able to wake up and get excited by it. One of the reasons I really loved business education is, like, you were in a different seat every single day. You were doing a different case every single day, and that was exciting to me.
And fast forward to today, where you're CEO of one of Canada's most historic menswear shops. You are working closely hand in hand with members of your family, and we've had people on this podcast talk about how you shouldn't mix business and family. Where do you stand on something like that?
There are people who have, from early age said, I want to work with my father. That was not me. I have learned to work with my father, and it's become an extremely rewarding experience. And we've learned to mix family and business and ownership, which are kind of the three pillars of, family enterprise. and family ownership in any business, that you have to think through each one of those pieces. But it comes with planning, and planning properly, and thinking through how are you going to divide and separate work and life. So when do we not talk about things? What are the norms that we're going to create for, to allow us to have a normal family dinner if something's happening at work? Or, how do you have an appropriate and constructive conversation that doesn't turn into a conversation between father and son or brother and brother? These are complicated things. We have involved experts in helping us navigate these things and set us up for success, because there are too many examples of that going wrong.
Oh, I can imagine.
But when you can get it right, it's so valuable to be able to, I guess, like the thing that I take pride in is we're really continuing my grandfather's vision for what he wanted to build and bring to Canadian men. And we still, while what we're selling has continually evolved and how we're selling it has continually evolved, we haven't lost sight of what his original thesis was, which is men need expertise, men need a fantastic experience, men need reliability from a retail partner, and we want to continue to bring that to them. So there have been moments, right? Like there
would be in any.
Well, I decided when I started in the business, I had a renovation on a house that I was working on with my wife that had gone over time and over budget, and decided to make my father my colleague and my roommate for the first 4 months of starting. So it was a lot to start, but again, we navigate these things. And that was my biggest fear of jumping in, is I actually delayed joining the business several times.
Why?
Just the unknown, right? Like, what if this goes wrong? And I was able to erase that fear, 2 to 3 weeks into starting to work there. Even when the first sense of, hey, we got to throw this wall up, we can't have this conversation now. I'm very lucky to have a father who only wanted this to be successful, and he didn't have as much of a plan with his father. It worked out. They're very lucky it worked out. Yeah. I think they're actually very cognizant that they were lucky that it worked out.
Yeah. What was you said you brought in experts. What was the secret sauce or the advice that helps at least family-owned businesses work together more cohesively?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that is just a mistake that so many businesses make is the next generation doesn't really get a role that makes sense. And that was something that we were super focused on with the experts, is if I'm going to come in, what am I responsible for? Is this a net new position? If it is, what functions report into me? What am I accountable for? In my experience, it was the online business. I had a P&L. I was accountable for 4 functions. I had 4 reports. I was responsible for a team of 35. That all rolled into me. It wasn't like, I want you to learn every little thing, so you have 10% responsibility over here, 20% over here, 10% over here, because I need you to see laterally like a CEO so that you can succeed me. So many people make the mistake of doing that. For me, it's allowed me to do 2 things. Firstly, I got safe space to, figure out how to contribute in my own way and contribute in a way that the business needed it. Number 2, it earns credibility, right? It's not like people can't see that I've been a part of changing a number of things. Some have worked, some have been mistakes, and I've been the first to admit, hey, we should throw that project out, or let's kill that project and move forward. That's on me. So people get to learn about you as a leader, who you are, and that you're not perhaps, your father. So it's complicated, but I think it's one of the best pieces of advice we got, because that's where I started running away from coming in, is I didn't feel like we had a material space for me to jump into. And I'm really grateful that we got it right. And then now with my brother joining, we've put him in charge of our off-price division. He oversees our outlet stores, and he oversees our off-price website, Final Cut. It's a great place for him to focus.
Mm-hmm.
The part of the business is starting to grow, and it's a role, right? It's not just something.
So just so I understand, they said, as opposed to having you come in and suddenly take on a little bit of everything, it's let's narrow the focus into one area, let you sort of get your feet wet, experience it, explore, sort of spread your wings, see what you can do, and then from there grow into other roles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and our business has changed dramatically over the 5 and a bit years that I've been with the business. So I started on the digital and online side. I quickly moved a little bit more into a general operations role. Now I sit in kind of chief operating officer and president. So I have a much more lateral vision. I'm more accountable for the global P&L. I'm accountable for all operations now. So there's been stuff that's changing.
Mm-hmm.
But those are roles that, are designed, have KPIs, have, people that report into them versus, I think there's a lot of, business development or, chief of staff roles that ultimately get designed, which a lot of them are credible, but I think the way we were starting to think about it, it wouldn't have accountability. And when you're going into the third generation of a business, you want that third generation to understand accountability. I mean, this is whether you're going to end up in the top seat or one of the top seats over time, you want to demonstrate that, everybody has a role to play. Every piece, every piece of the puzzle adds up to the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what don't people understand about the role of a president in a business like yours? What don't they see?
The hat changes every hour of every day. You have to be very thoughtful about, what ends up in market, all of the campaigns, all the fashion that we put out, making sure that we're investing wisely. You also have to focus on, is our team performing? Is everybody completing their goals? How is everybody tracking to their goals? You're accountable for global performance management. And then you are like where the buck stops when it comes to client issues and client complaints. I spend a ton of my energy resolving issues that clients have had because, number one, I think it's important that we continue to stand behind what we're putting out there. Yes, we have stores as far as Vancouver and Winnipeg and Montreal and Calgary. I can't be there physically, but issues get escalated our way that we have to make sure that we jump in and resolve. And it's something that I think my father was very focused on. Harry was always very focused on showing customers that you're hearing the issues that they're having and taking them seriously goes such a far way. So again, like that could be a typical day where I'm doing so many different things, but that's fun for me. It's also really rewarding.
Yeah. And
how do you navigate between being Ian and you are CEO because you're Ian versus people thinking just because you're Rosen, you're a CEO?
I think there is, if you want to peel it back, when you enter a family business, you have to accept that you're probably not going to get full credit for anything you do. Okay. And you have to be totally comfortable with that. And I am.
Are you?
I'm not
Was that an immediate comfortability or did it take you some time?
Before I jumped in, I knew and I had to come to terms with the fact that if I'm looking to write my novel, this is the wrong path, right? I am looking to continue. I am looking to, I get my energy from working with great people and solving interesting problems. And I really don't care if somebody's busy saying, oh, that article that was written about Harry Rosen and his transformation, I'm going to give zero credit to I don't care. It's just not what I'm focused on. It's not what keeps me motivated. And I think that that's where a lot of third generation, family business, people who join a family business in the third generation, that's where it starts to get more and more difficult, right? you're in 2 generations of shadows, right? And you just got to be comfortable with it.
Do you feel the weight of that shadow?
No, I don't see it as a shadow. I think that's more where when I came in, it was less, let me see this as the opportunity to continue something incredible.
Yeah.
And I now have kids of my own. I get to think about what they might do with this business, or what they, what am I building it for now? It's very clear to me that I want to make an impact. I really, really bought into the vision that Harry had, and I can see that continuing to evolve as the world evolves around it.
Yeah.
So as fashion evolves, as the way of selling evolves, I mean, we're at the forefront of digital experience because it is important, right? If we were going to stay stuck in time and be a suit shop, I wouldn't have joined. So there's a buy-in to transform. There's a buy-in to evolve. That's the business. That's not me. So that's the culture that we've continued to develop. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Are you finding a challenge in that transformation? The ability to move it from just a suit shop to providing all sorts of different services and options, and the ability to go a lot more international even with the online component.
Yeah, we made a very deliberate decision to just focus on Canada. We want to be the best in the world focused on Canada. So we don't benchmark ourselves against Canadian competition. We're benchmarking ourselves against global, but we're not shipping internationally. And we're...
What's the thought process there?
There is a lot of opportunity in front of us. Every time we ship a package, away from our borders, we're losing the opportunity to service that client in, I guess, an omni-channel way. We do have clients who shop us exclusively online, and that's fine. But I think where the magic starts to happen is around, our buy online or try online, pick up in store experience, and, seeing what's available in store, being able to go to some of the great events, being able to build a personal relationship with an advisor at the store and continue that online. I mean, one of the first things that I worked with the team is, okay, let's think about the problem of Harry Rosen, a store that is traditionally almost 100% in store. What's the best way for it to go online? You can take pictures of 100% of the inventory, write descriptions about them, and allow people to add that to the cart and shop. But how could you actually be moving the business online? Well, you could take the people who have the relationships with clients and find a way for them to bring their relationships online. So we built an application. One of my favorite patterns is herringbone, so we call it herringbone, which, some people curse herringbone. And the basic philosophy around this is I can look up my client, I can look up my full inventory, I can add that to a personal page for Samir, and I can say Samir is a size medium in this brand, and I can fill out the page all the way down to his size, and all he has to do is add that to the cart and check out. How much more comfortable would you be shopping online with us if that was your first experience with it, rather than, okay, automatic. I'm going to go. So for us, that was one of the things we worked on pre-pandemic.
Right.
During the pandemic, when, we had to work through the incredibly difficult situation of closing our stores across the country several times, open, closed, closed. We were non-essential retail. And that was not our choice, right? So we're not able to open the stores. People are furloughed and at home. And we found creative ways to make sure that they were still incentivized to continue working with their clients. And that was a core piece of it. It saved our online, but it continued to drive our online business through the pandemic. It represented close to 15 to 20% some weeks of the business that we were doing online during peak pandemic periods. And now every single week, it's less. It's not 20% of our online business, but it's still 5 to 10 to 15% of advisors' total year's contributions will be online.
Right. That pandemic really forced what was already sort of, and I think that's the clear distinction there, is that there was already an intentional migration towards online, but the pandemic expedited that.
Yeah. And to me, it is not being online, but how do you want to show up online? How do you want your business to show up online? And if we're showing up online without that, secret weapon, which is our people, then we're not going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And we are able to build relationships with our clients for years, sometimes generations. I mean, like the other day I was in the store, I met the son of one of our top clients who's starting to shop with us as well. Mm-hmm. Like he's just getting into the workforce. Like there's so much opportunity to reintroduce ourselves to a generation where there's trust there already, but they want to shop in a much different way as well, right? And we have to make sure that we're training our people on how the modern guy wants to shop. And shorts, t-shirt, he doesn't want to come in for him. Suit, new arrivals, browsing, have it ready for me. That's something like worth making a visit for. Mm-hmm. So we got to acknowledge that at the gate. Like we're trying to adapt to the trends we're seeing, not force them the other way.
Mm-hmm. Is there a lesson, or what is the biggest lesson that you've learned from your father in this business?
There is so much. Firstly, he showed me, and without teaching me, he brought that understanding of like, this is not about you. This is about us and the team and the business. And, if you're going to be ego-driven and egocentric, like you're not going to be the right leader for this. And watching him in action has allowed me to, I guess, emulate a lot of those traits and behave in I think the way that, pushes that, very clearly towards our team that this is not, the Ian Rosen show. It's a story for all of us. To be authoring. And I think the second is he's such a great dot connector. He can hear something in one meeting and then, go into another and basically, help an entire team figure out that they don't know, here's what they didn't know based on, the exposure that he's seeing. And I think that's like the part of the new role that I stepped in a year ago that I'm probably still working on, is being able to connect dots for people based on exposure or understanding or picking something up when you were on a store visit or hearing something from a client and figuring out, oh, this is probably related to that tech issue I heard about in that, Monday morning stand-up. So watching him do that is, I don't really know how to teach myself dot connecting, probably some app out there for pattern connecting. Yeah.
You mentioned that there wasn't any pressure to join. What was the pressure from yourself to either like not join because like I don't want to be that, or for your own self?
I kept it very far away intentionally to figure out that question on my own. One of the reasons I wanted to move to the U.S. for a while is because I really didn't want to be like Harry Rosen's grandson. I went to Ivy for my undergrad. There's like a Rosen meeting room or something. Like it wasn't a secret. My father went to Ivy. He was on the advisory board there. It was kind of one of those things where I was like, I really just want to write a standardized test, get into business school somewhere, and move down to the U.S. and kind of reset, prove a little bit more to myself. And I wanted more global exposure as well. So I moved to Chicago for 4.5 years. 2 of that in the professional world, 2 of that working in business school. And that was a safe space for me to start thinking about, coming back or what kind of business got me excited, is where I started doing a lot more consumer work and solving a lot of those problems, and then getting excited about the prospect of doing that back at home. So I kept it as far away as possible. I mean, the funny thing is, when I started at Kellogg Business School at Northwestern, I tried to run away from this entire thing, and then I'm in my intro marketing class, which the entire section takes, and one of the cases, like, they start showing a video, and it's my grandfather and Larry, my dad, on like some old CBC spot. And I'm just in the back of the class saying, what the heck is going on right now? I had no warning. He didn't make the connection between the last name, the marketing professor. the purpose of the case was to show what bad, like, that this company in Canada was not following all the frameworks that you just learned. It was like the
Here's an example of what
not to do. And at the end I was like, well, you don't have all the context. It wasn't that bad. It actually worked. And it was like, okay, now everybody's taking this case, so at least I got a semester without anybody knowing about it. So
was there any criticism as to the decision making behind keeping Harry Rosen Canadian specific, or focused rather? Because if a brand does as well as it does, there's always, a contingent of people who go, how can I get more?
Yeah.
How can we expand it more? There's cities right down the street from us that we can start expanding to into the U.S. It's one thing to say we're making a conscious decision. It's another to uphold that decision when there could be evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, I can, if I could pull up my phone, we have a great favorites folder of failed projects. And the decision builds on, tough lessons learned. We did expand to the U.S., and we found it to be a major distraction. This is like late 90s, early 2000s. We were in the Walden Galleria in Buffalo. There were a few other markets that we were about to expand into, and we actually brought the brand Hugo Boss to the U.S. Mm-hmm. So we operated, I think, 12 or 14 boutiques. We opened Bal Harbor. We opened, Michigan Avenue. We opened New York boutiques. We opened the L.A. boutiques. And it was just such a distraction. And it was different than our core business model. And there were just complications of working with a brand that wasn't, our own. And, it seemed like a chip shot, and it ended up being like the biggest energy drain in the entire world. We also have, we were in the women's business. Harry Rosen Women's Wear. There are so many women that when I meet them at networking events or just around, they'll say, I still have my first Harry Rosen. Nobody makes it like that. Nobody made it, but we couldn't keep up with the pace of fashion. It was a different calendar. We would basically have to double the size of the business, which a lot of businesses have been able to do, but we made the conscious decision to just say, hey, if tailoring is our, core competency and women's is going a lot more fashion, like, let's just focus on men right now. So we wound down that business. We are playing around with women's made to measure right now. We have a beta project going on out of our Bloor Street flagship in Toronto, and we have a couple partners that we're working on with that. We still feel there's a gap, but we're going to be super measured with this project. So stay tuned. But that's kind of the way we approach these things, is like, we know the energy drain, right? Even there were people who were restricting our expansion into online because it was going to be an energy drain. That was one where we had to just charge through that wall. So it's not like we aren't evolving. And I never say never, right? But right now, it just makes a ton of sense based on the opportunities in front of us to focus on Canada and focus on men in Canada. Yeah. Where this fall is pretty exciting for us. We're launching an entirely new stream of fashion for Harry Rosen. So we're bringing in a lot more, I guess, contemporary designers, more runway. It's not what you think about for Harry Rosen. We've brought a lot of fashion and luxury into the market for a long time, but we're partnering with brands like Balmain, Kenzo, Marni, Xenia Times the Elder Statesman. There's a list. Maison Margiela, Jill Sander, very well-known names. Yeah. And we feel very excited because A, we know there's a market out there for these brands. B, we think it really changes our role in the marketplace, especially with the exit of Nordstrom. There's just a ton of opportunity for us to focus on providing fashion to Canadian men. And I think the really interesting piece is we find that these brands are often not thought through when they're presented as like a complete collection. Especially anchoring back to tailoring pieces like blazers and sports jackets and overcoats, are a lot more t-shirt driven. and we want to make sure that we're presenting the full collection, and it should be pretty exciting. We'll see. They've been great partners so far. We have a big launch coming up in like a week from now. I think we're partnering with an ice cream store to brand a bunch of custom flavors, Ruru Baked, which is my pandemic Uber Eats habit, if you've tried it.
So you mentioned Nordstrom.
Yep.
And I want to ask, because I was actually going to ask you before you mentioned it, I take a walk in a mall, and there's a lot of shops, retail shops that are, within a few months closing. And you hear it all the time in the news of this brand or this shop closing, that shop closing. And then obviously with Nordstrom and the size of Nordstrom closing up, what separates a business like Harry Rosen from these other ones that's allowed it to both sustain itself all these years, but also what seems to be a case of growing despite what is happening to other businesses in the same space?
Yeah. I think there's two things that are happening in retail. Firstly, being privately held allows you to focus on good, solid fundamentals rather than just chasing explosive growth. And a lot of the brands that you see proliferating mall to mall all over the place are often financially backed, and there's a big motivation for that store count and that dollar count to grow, and there's an urgency to it, right? So I'm not saying it's a wrong strategy, but that's one of the big forces that's happening out there. We can be a lot more measured. Like, we're opening a store in Vancouver now it'll be 2026 in a new mall development, and that's our only store on the horizon. We are doing renovations of our existing stores, but we're not really thinking about new. So that's one of the things that's happening. In terms of like what's forcing stores to close, I really like, there's a retail, I don't know, scholar, pundit, not a pundit, but expert. His name's Stephen Dennis, and he's the first to point out that physical retail is not dead, and direct to consumer is not new, but bad retail is dying, and retail without a point of view is dying. And I'm not saying this for Nordstrom. I don't think that they were able to replicate the magic that they have in the U.S. and Canada. Canada is very complicated. Each one of our stores, we have to think through different sizing grids, and we look at the productivity of different fashion labels in each and every location, and doing a copy paste doesn't always work in a market as diverse and complicated as Canada, especially in like a city like Toronto, where downtown from the West End, from even Sherway to Square One, where we have two different stores, like the profile of the client is completely different. The wants of the client are completely different. So,
and I've noticed the difference between the two stores.
Yeah, we're laser focused on like, what does this specific market need? And I think that so many people are just missing that part of the equation, right? So they're relying so much on the brand to do the selling, and they have a copy paste. This is what our stores look like, A, B, C. And then number two, I think they're not trying to think through what an inspiring experience looks like. Our big focus, even to come back to the decision not to expand further, we have a lot of work to do domestically. We're trying to rethink our retail experience in a big way. How do we show up differently? What does experiential retail look like in the Harry Rosen setting? We're about to kick off a 6-month renovation project in West Edmonton Mall, which is one of our great locations. If you've been to West Edmonton Mall, it's like one of the only places you could visit Harry Rosen and go in the water park.
It's a crazy mall.
Yeah, it's a great, it's great. And we've been there. It was actually our first store outside of Toronto was West Edmonton Mall. So we've been home there for a long time, but we're doing a down to the studs rebuild. And when you walk into our store, we're going to have basically this really dynamic pop-up area that, like, if we want to push a new brand, if we want to do a takeover with outerwear, if we want to bring in a partner and have them there, like, that's going to be one of the first things that you see, because we want the customer to not see wallpaper when they come in. We want to surprise and delight, and that's that's an exciting project for us, because totally rebuilding our retail experience, which is, it's been our secret sauce, but we need to add some oregano. And
Well, it seems like every so often there has to be a little bit of an upgrade to match what the current climate or the current market is.
Yeah, I credit my father, Larry, for seeing what we had to do with such clear and uncompromising vision towards what's going to happen when the American department stores come here. He said, we have to look our best in the A-plus malls immediately.
Right.
So we did a $100 million capital expansion of all of our existing stores. We grew stores like Yorkdale. We expanded stores like Sherway. And we brought our A game to, an important market share battle. And I'm not, saying we won, but if we didn't make those investments, we definitely wouldn't have shown up in the way that the market needed us to.
I have 2 questions. One, what makes a good suit, and what is it about the tailoring process that is so great?
We have what makes a good suit is there's a lot of details that go into manufacturing a garment that change the fit and drape of a specific suit, whether it's handwork or canvassing or even just a little detailing that you can see throughout. So those are markers of craftsmanship. Fabric is an incredibly important ingredient. So if you're, really going up to, a super thin, lightweight, luxurious fabric, like the second it goes on your shoulders, you're going to feel the difference. Like I was meeting with somebody earlier today, and, they're a huge fan of our private label, our private brand Herald. And our Herald shop is right beside the Brioni shop, which we just launched an exclusive partnership in Canada with Brioni. Brioni has I forget the number of hours of handwork that go into each and every garment, but it's insane. And when I was like, just put it on. Just put it on. And he's like, I can't believe it. Just put it on. You don't have to buy it. But even he, who was a little bit resistant to some of the pricing out there, is like, I understand. I understand just how much work goes into this garment, and where, again, you're buying an incredible amount of craftsmanship that goes into every garment. But at Harry Rosen, we have a rule. It's called good-looking clothing. And the rule is, do not send somebody out the door unless it's with good-looking clothing. If it doesn't fit them, put it back on the rack and strongly suggest that they don't buy it. Because there's so much tailored clothing out there that people are force-fitting, or everybody's body shape and type is so different. Like, some people might be, a little bit, I have a sloped shoulder, so I don't like having padding in my shoulder if it really starts to bring me up. Some people like a more padded shoulder or something. Some people have bigger chests, so you might want the lapel to sit in a specific way. You have to put a lot of thought into this stuff, and you have to know all the variables that go into, the alteration process to make it end up looking great, right? So you can make a few calls when you send something to a tailor shop that throw things completely off balance. So unless you've been really, really trained on, if you bring in the side vents, like you're gonna need to do something with the armholes, or they're gonna start to look, it's gonna start flapping over here. And if you don't understand that, and you start, might get the suit peeking up like this and things like that. So it's very meticulous. We have a process, it's like a academy. We call it clothesmanship. And before you start selling and work, introducing clients to tailored clothing, you have to go through this very rigorous clothesmanship process with assessments. I failed 3 or 4 times. I get my recertification every single year. There's a specific way to measure the waist, which I always mess up, because you're supposed to measure on the side, and I always end up not doing it in the most smooth way. So, and then there's math involved with how big, what size pants go with what size jacket. So it's complicated. But at the end of the day, we want somebody to end up looking good in what we send them out the door with.
Feeling good.
And feeling good. one of the big insights behind like our brand positioning that we've always been focused on is like, when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good. And when you're out there doing, like, when you're not thinking about what you're wearing because you're confident in it, you can do so much.
Something else that's on your
Like
mind.
every day should feel like laundry day, you know? every day you should have that great t-shirt at the top of the pile and that great sports jacket, you know, on the hanger, and you shouldn't feel like you're compromising any day of the week. So that's what we're striving for when we're working with the client, is giving them the opportunity to, at all, you know, levels of quality, shop like that, and build a style portfolio or you know, your own brand with us.
What's one thing about Ian, about you, that people don't know?
What don't they know about me? I mean, I spend so much of my time right now with my kids. It's like, I never thought, you hear all these like vague thing, you know, it's going to change your life when you have kids. It's going to be, you know, this life-changing thing. And I don't know when it happened, but I'm just totally, like, when I'm with them, I can end my day super tired, and I'm just like totally and completely like just thrilled that I'm getting these moments. Even like the pandemic, when Harry Rosen was working itself through some of the most challenging things, being able to be around for my like first kid, first crawl, first little, you know, step, I'll never have that afforded me that experience. So they end up being like my incredible outlet that I have the pleasure of spending so many days with, but they're exhausting as well. So that's not completely, it's known. I'm also like addicted to stand-up comedy.
Do you do any?
I don't do any.
Would you try it?
I would try it. But I need to
mic night?
practice. What?
An open mic night you go
Open
to?
mic I wouldn't do, but I find I just get such a, like, I love watching how people think about other people, making other people laugh, whether it's like through discomfort or controversy or shock. So there's really no stand-up comedian that I'm not watching, even if I'm not like the biggest fan of their comedy. I'm just fascinated by like the
ability to craft a joke.
I think it's amazing that people just want to make people laugh. Yeah. Right? Like that, what good is it if you're not having fun?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's holding you back from giving it a shot?
What's holding me back from giving it a shot? I think probably opportunity. And whatever other excuses I could throw out there.
Yeah. Because there's open mic nights.
Plenty open mic nights.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'll now it's out in the open, so I should probably hold myself accountable.
Next time I see you, I'm gonna ask you if you've done it.
You know what? I started taking photos while I'm at the gym to hold myself accountable, because now people ask me, you haven't been to the gym in a while. Yeah. So now that I've said this out loud, maybe it'll start to be like, hey, you should probably do something.
Yeah. So final question I wanted to ask you in relation to fatherhood. When you're working in a family-owned business and you're in a senior level position that demands a lot of your time and attention, how are you balancing being a father and then being a son at work and being the president and the COO and all of these different hats that you're wearing, but ensuring that the thing that you say, you told me, brings you this level of joy and thrill? How are you balancing all of those things?
That's the $1 trillion question. I am working at asking the people around me for the, or even expressing like what I want. I would love to be able to be around for bath time every night. So I'm going to make sure my calendar is clear from 5 to 7 every single day. If I have to work after, I got the buy-in from my wife and the understanding that, okay, punt it out to later, but making sure that you're asking for, this is important to me. Don't let it slip away, build your life around and your schedule around being home. And I'm probably one of those people who like just let the world happen for a long time. So it's probably an uncomfortable thing for me to be doing. Like, hey, I need you to make sure I can work after, and I need you to make sure that you're holding me accountable to be like, make sure I'm home at this time, or even just being open with my team at work, saying, hey, I don't do meetings at this time. Don't call a meeting for 4:45. I'm not showing up. And I'm okay if you create your boundaries too. I'm pretty comfortable at the amount that I'm putting into things. So that's been a big learning experience for me as I juggle the various hats. And I think the other is I have just like this core value that I'm trying to develop and make sure I stay true to, which is if I'm going to do something, I don't want to do it at 50%. It's the one thing that, like, if I show up to the gym, or if I show up to hockey, or if I show up to a date and I'm just on my phone and my phone's buzzing, the outcome's never positive.
Sure.
It's always, the person on the other end of the table feeling slighted, or the team feeling like, oh, you're always gonna flake to a work thing whenever you're doing it. So I'm trying to make sure I'm living that way. It's a process, and I'm making sure that I say this stuff out loud as much as possible, because then people can hold you in a safe way accountable to it.
Accountability is key, and I think that's a theme here, because in one way or another you've brought up accountability as being something that's part of working in this industry, being a father, being a partner, being a son, being an employee, whatever.
Brother.
Yeah,
Brothers
like
in it.
A fantasy football team co-owner. My draft is tonight.
Is yours?
Okay.
I
Yes.
already had 2 drafts. I have another one tomorrow.
Yeah. I didn't realize the commitment I was making. I had to
It's
reassess.
not that much of a commitment. You just like Sunday, Thursday,
You have to
Monday.
commit to the trash talking as much as you're
The
committed.
trash talk. The
Yes.
trash talking is the best part of fantasy football.
Yeah, but you have to be there
Yeah.
at the ready with a good
Yeah.
meme or
Yeah.
two. So
Yeah. Ian, thank you so much.
yeah, thank
This
you.
was good.
This was fun.
I remember when I was a young pup, I walked into Fairview Mall where there was a Harry Rosen, and that was the very first suit shop I ever walked into, and thinking to myself, like, when I'm older one day, I'll actually come back in here and buy something. And then it wasn't all that long ago that I finally walked into a Harry Rosen again and purchased something for the first time, and was like, yeah, it was like a full circle moment for me. So I commend you and your family and all the people that work at Harry Rosen for doing what you're doing, because it is very much a staple of Canadian menswear. It's part of sort of the Canadian identity in that space. And moving it online, dealing with the pandemic and all those things, I think is a huge deal to take on. One that your team have done quite well, if I may say so.
Yeah.
And I wish you the best of luck in all the future endeavors of Harry Rosen and being a dad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me here. It was a lot of fun.
No, this was
Appreciate
great.
it.
We're going to do it again sometime after your first open mic.
Yes. I'll do it here. This is it.
There you go. Hey, we got a mic.
I got a tight 20 right now.
There, perfect. Let's do it. Thank you so much for coming
Appreciate
through.
you.
Thank you,
you.
everybody, for listening.